Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Josh Cast, the first and the only movie podcast on the internet. I am Josh, joined by my co host,
I'm Chris.
and this is our first episode. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
Woo.
Today, we're going to be discussing the film Past Lives, directed by Celine Song, starring Greta Lee, Teo Yo, and John Magaro.
Yeah.
Um, And why don't we jump right into the synopsis? Past Lives follows Nora and Hae Sung, two Koreans who were childhood sweethearts. Nora eventually leaves the country for the US, but years later the two reconnect over Skype. Eventually, they decide that they need some time apart. 20 years later, Haesung finally meets up in person with Nora and her husband Arthur to discuss what could have been of their lives. After a bittersweet conversation, they decide to meet each other again in their next lives.
That was wonderful. It felt like I watched the movie in maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Heart.
it's been a while for you, right?
Now, it has been a while since I've seen this because I saw it when it came out in theaters back in July or so. Um, and it, it's been a while. I've forgotten a little bit of it, but I do remember a good chunk of it, and I remember exactly how I feel.
Yes. I also really enjoyed it. Speaking of how you feel, why don't we give our rating? Are we doing out of 5 or out of 10?
Out of 5.
Ugh, fine.
What? Okay. Hear me out. The thing with out of 5, or out of 10, I feel like it compels a lot of people to just say 7. That's just a thing that I think. But also, out of 5, you
Now,
can literally just
I do give
multiply it.
out a lot of 7s, but that's because there's a lot of solid movies out there that aren't necessarily great, but they're not mediocre either.
That's fair. Now, I'll go first. When I
Yeah.
saw this movie in theaters, I was thinking that it was going to be a great movie, which it is. But when I left the theater, it didn't click with me fully. So I gave it a 3.5, which is still a good rating out of 5. But eventually, I thought it through and I could not get this movie out of my head for the next week or so. So I eventually bumped it up to 4 stars. I am very inclined right now to bumping up to 4.5 or 5, but that would have to be on another rewatch.
Interesting, interesting. It sounds like just on the first watch, I clicked with it a lot more than you. This movie like really touched a profoundly deep part of my soul. Um, it was I gave it a I'm gonna be stubborn. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Um, um, and I I feel like if I revisit this movie in the future, it could very easily move up to a 10 out of 10 and become one of my favorites.
I actually agree with that statement of the rewatch. I mean, it has everything I love. I mean, my two favorite genres are horror and romance, with, you know, my favorite, my third favorite movie being 500 Days of Summer.
Mhm.
It's just a great genre for me. Um, and the horror aspect of it, of just watching the movie and being like, "Yikes, this is an awkward situation for all of these characters, especially at the end." That was scary to me.
Yeah, it's scarier than a slasher movie,
That's
right?
what I'm saying. Scarier than Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
And that movie was pretty scary, if I do say so.
Yeah, I almost put a dookie in my pants in the theater.
Jesus Christ. Um, yeah, I think this film was both written and directed beautifully. There's so many just I don't want to say lawn shots, even though they kind of technically by definition are,
Uh huh.
but just it's it's written like a play where there's a bunch of lawn scenes with a bunch of dialogue. Um, and many of them are just straight up brilliant.
I also agree with basically all of that. I mean, this movie is shot beautifully. There are so many
Yeah.
shots that I was watching being like, that is an amazing shot. Like the standouts for me right now are the talking on the steps behind with the carousel behind them, and
Uh-huh.
also the shot where they're on the train, the subway or the train, and they're holding onto the railing and they're looking at each other. I love that shot so much.
Oh, speaking of shots, um, the final long shot of this movie.
Oh
It's
my
stunning.
days, I
I
forgot
don't know how long it is, but
the.
just them walking down the street
And
and
then when
then
she walks back, oh
yeah.
my days, that struck me in the theater. I was, oh, that's such a good scene.
Speaking of that scene, something I briefly mentioned it in the summary, but something that really struck a chord for me in that scene was um, the last thing they say to each other. Um, uh, we haven't really touched on this yet, but this movie has a big theme of the concept of immune,
Yes.
which is the concept basically of the people whose lives we touch that gets carried on into the next life. And as you build more and more connections over more and more lives, um, in the in a future life, said person will have a bigger role in your life. Um, so in that last scene, as as Hae Sung is about to get into a cab to leave, um, they just say to each other, "See you then," in reference to their next life.
It's such a great line in such a great scene in such a great movie. I mean, what could you ask for? You know what I'm saying? All the
On
actors,
God,
all the actors are performing. All the camera is recording, and it's amazing. I mean, Greta Lee and Teo Yo have standout performances. I've only known Greta Lee from the Spider Verse movies.
who did she play in that?
She does Lila, the Spider Man 2099's robot or AI girlfriend.
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen Across the Spider Verse, but you know at the end,
I haven't seen Across the Spider Verse, guys.
you know, yeah,
Don't crucify me.
it will be a podcast episode because obviously that's going to be at the Oscars.
I wouldn't be surprised if it gets into Best Picture, which that shouldn't be a thing that I should have to say, but it is because the Oscars hates animated movies.
They also hate horror movies famously.
Yeah,
Um, but at the end, the post credit scene of Spider Man Into the Spider Verse is Spider Man 2099 going back to, or just trying to cross dimensions, and he's
yeah,
talking to a girl the whole time, and the girl that he's talking to is played by Greta Lee.
Interesting. I'm
Yeah.
gonna check if there's anything else I know her from.
And then Teo Yo,
Oh,
I
there it
have heard of his other movie, Decision to Leave. I've heard it's very good. By directed by Park Chan Wook. He's he's a pretty good director. I've only seen Old Boy, but I think Old Boy is pretty good. And I'll have to check out Decision to Leave
is.
because I heard that it's the best movie in 2022. I'll have to see for myself though.
Really?
Yeah,
I'll have to throw that on the watch list.
for real, on God. Now back to the movie. I mean, um,
That was an interesting tangent.
yeah, it's crazy just how well this is directed for a first time director. Um,
Is it first time?
it's
This is her debut.
yeah, her directorial debut,
Oh my god.
and she has a she like I'm pretty sure like not even a month after the movie was at Sundance, or maybe a little bit after, um, they already announced she's making a new movie with A24 called Materialists, which I've already thrown on the watch list, and I'm very excited to see.
I'll throw that on the watch list right now.
Because she's directing and writing, so
Yeah, she should direct Avengers Secret Wars.
she should direct the Marvels too.
Okay.
Um, I forgot where I was. Yeah, just amazing job directing overall.
Yeah. Um I I think that she has the um what's the word? I think there's a very real possibility that she will be a huge name in the future.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, and would be happy if she won Best Directors at the Oscars this year.
Hmm.
Um, I think this movie will most likely get put up for Best Picture, but also there are just so many movies coming out that possibly not, which would be unfortunate because this is my second favorite movie of the year, second behind Shin Kamen Rider, but that's a discussion for another day. Um,
You really love Shin Kamen Rider.
it's my favorite movie probably of all time. I just think that this movie is like almost revolutionary in a sense where the dialogue is almost amazing. Like the characters just there can be a shot of the characters talking for like 10 minutes, but it's never boring because of how good the dialogue is.
Yeah, the actors they do an incredible job with this script, which is obviously already incredible, but they're just I get so entranced watching this movie.
I agree with that. Like sometimes, most of the times with my bad attention span, TikTok brain rot, during a movie, I will feel enticed to check my phone a few times just to see what time it is, just to see how long the movie's been going on. There was not a moment during this movie where I wanted to check my phone, which should be the case for every movie.
Hmm.
But I don't know. There are some stinkers that I go to see, and I'm like, I just need to see what time it is.
Yeah. This film, it never really drags, and I think a large part of that is actually due to the structure of the film, um, where after uh after a certain amount of time before a section of the film can like start to feel kind of long and drag, they jump ahead to like the next time period.
Yeah, it works very well.
Hmm. I'm checking my notes from when I watched it.
Yeah, I didn't take notes because I saw it in the theaters. But
Yeah, this is definitely something I'm gonna try continue to do for future movies, especially the Oscar ones.
yeah, because our theaters do not show Oscar movies very well, and when they do, it's on weekdays, which never work out time wise. It's a whole thing. So we usually end up watching our Oscar nominations at home a month before or whenever the Oscar noms come out.
Hmm. Yeah, which hopefully will be a bit better about that now that we have um, a podcast giving us the responsibility to watch them beforehand.
Yeah, and
That was actually a large part for why I wanted to do this, was to force myself to watch more movies, because I love movies. I've just for like the past like 2 years or so, I've just been watching them less.
I agree with that. I always want to watch more movies, and I always want to talk about movies. I mean, movies are like one of my watching movies is a pastime for me that is above most things. And I'll tell you what, Josh, I'm looking at this 2023 roster, and I think Transformers 6 is going to go all the way for Best Picture this year.
What?
Transformers 6, Rise of the
Where did that
Beasts.
come from?
Listen, I'm just putting it out there.
You know this is supposed to be an episode on past lives, right?
I, I get that. And
Maybe we're a Transformers podcast now.
possibly.
We might have to make that executive decision.
But back to past lives.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I mean,
This podcast, it's gonna be full of random tangents like that.
yeah. There's not much more to
It's
say.
part of the fun.
There's not much more to say about past lives because of just how solid it is. It's just such a
I
solid
have a
movie.
bit more. I wouldn't say it's not much more. I still have notes.
All right, all right.
Yeah, give me the mic,
Take it
metaphorically
away,
speaking.
Note Boy.
That's me. Um, I'm just gonna read through some of the notes I made while while watching it. I think this could be a fun segment, because sometimes I make some interesting notes.
Sounds good.
For example, the second note I wrote while watching it was rooting for them to become a thruple.
Honestly, I thought the same thing during the movie. I was like, why don't they just all date? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. What's this dude's name? Arthur. Arthur, kind of by vibes.
Yeah. A writer? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I would say he doesn't have bi vibes, but the fact that he's a writer says yes.
Didn't he? Isn't the big book he made like called like Boner or something?
I don't know. I
Gotcha.
haven't watched this movie in years. Um, Another thing that I really enjoyed about this movie was the opening scene where it's from the perspective of two people in the bar watching them in that the bar scene from the end. Um,
Yes.
and they're trying to figure out who's dating who.
Yeah.
It really kind of it immediately adds an air of mystery and you wanting to know like what's up with them, and it sets up the big question of the movie of how will this all work out.
Yeah. How will the tale unfold?
Who is dating who,
That's what I'm saying.
and is it the men?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Another scene I really loved was it was um Arthur and Nora in their bedroom, um like the night before Hae Sung comes.
Oh yeah, yeah, where they're talking about it, and he's worried about him, get her getting swept off her feet.
Yeah, I just think it's a great representation of a healthy relationship. They actually communicate and understand each other.
Real, actually, so real. Because during the movie, after that scene, I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait, why didn't they yell at each other? Just because of there's a lot of representation of toxic relationships
Hmm.
in media that I was just surprised that they didn't have a screaming match by the end of the scene.
Yeah, it's honestly surprising that just a scene of two people being good for each other, um, like took me by surprise. And but honestly though, Arthur was surprisingly chill about this whole thing.
That's so true. He was just kind of like the scene at the bar, especially shows it because he like, I believe, like for the last like few minutes of the conversation, both um Nora and Haesung are just speaking in Korean,
Yeah.
and Arthur does not speak Korean, so it just creates this almost comedical scene where they'll be having this heartfelt conversation in Korean, and then it'll like switch to a shot of Arthur, and he'll just be like looking at his drink.
Yeah, he just he trusts her and he knows her well enough to know that this isn't an issue and she needs this.
Yeah, which I think is great.
Um, the last major note I have is also on the bar scene. Um, it was just me writing down some quotes that really stuck with me.
Go for it.
So Haesung says to Nora, "You had to leave because you are you, and the reason I liked you is because you are you, and who you are is someone who leaves." They then proceed to talk about Inyun and how this isn't their life to be together, um, because she has 8,000 Inyun with Arthur. Um, so Haesung says to her, to Arthur, "You're someone who stays."
Yes,
That cut my soul when I watched it.
that was a great line. That was such a great line that I remember that line. Uh, Now, it being like 3 months since I've seen it, 3 or 4. I think
It's like four,
exactly 4. Yeah.
5, 6.
Okay. Well, wouldn't go that far. Um, but I mean, if that's all your notes,
Yeah.
if
Do you have anything?
I really, I mean, you summed it up perfectly, and I feel like this has been a, you know, great first episode, and this is a great place to end our first episode. And I figure we could do a thing where we predict
Yeah.
if this movie is gonna win an Oscar or not.
Interesting. That's a fun bit. That's a fun bit.
Um,
Um, yeah, I'm down.
all right, I'm gonna say that this is gonna win at least one Oscar.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to win something. I think it'll get noms in Best Picture, maybe directing, um, and possibly Best Original Screenplay. I could see it winning any of those.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, like this is like I know the big movies of 2023 are Oppenheimer and Barbie. This is better than both of them, in my opinion.
Wow, I wouldn't go so far, but it's
Okay,
right up there with them.
all right.
Um, yeah, we haven't done our Barbenheimer episode yet, but um, so far Barbie has been my favorite movie that came out this year.
Mine is Shin Kamen Rider, but that's probably not going to get an episode, just because it's probably not going to get any Oscar buzz,
Unfortunately not.
unfortunately. But maybe we can do it for a non-Oscar video or episode.
Yeah, maybe, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our first episode on past lives and on the Oscars as a whole. Tune back, tune back in next week. Same Josh time, same Josh channel, where we will
Yep.
where we will be going over a movie that I recommended to Josh to watch.
You're going first.
Yeah.
All right. Should we announce what that movie is for the viewers?
Uh, I mean, yeah, since we already both have watched it recently.
Yeah.
Um, the movie I recommended for Josh was The Strangers Pray at Night. So
Yeah.
there will be an episode on that next week. And yeah, follow us on Letterbox.
Yes. I need to figure out where we're gonna put it on Spotify, but it's linked to our YouTube. And
Yes,
we need followers.
yeah, Letterbox is all I have left. Anyways, bye.